This is Focus with Jack Caudill.
Good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome to this month's edition of Focus. This month we are talking about initiated Measure 29 that will go before South Dakota voters in November that would legalize recreational marijuana here in the state of South Dakota. For guests with us to talk about that, Brad Jurgenson. He is with the Vote Yes on 29 ballot committee. Kittrick Jeffries, he is the owner of Puffy's Dispensary. Jim Kinyon is the chair of the group South Dakota Protecting South Dakota Kids. He is also a counselor. And Dr. Lori Strong is a pediatrician with Black Hills Pediatrics here in Rapid City. A little background. Again, South Dakota voters will be voting on November 5th. This would legalize the recreational use, possession, and distribution of marijuana. It would allow people 21 and over to possess up to 6 plants, up to 12 plants per household. Now, Constitutional Amendment A, which would legalize marijuana, passed in 2020. 54.1% voted yes, but that was overturned on a constitutional challenge. And again, initiated Measure 27 failed in 2022. 52.9% of South Dakotans voting no on that one. We're going to start with you, Brad. Now, there's been a wave of marijuana legalization around the country. Is this time for South Dakota to join in that group?
Well, we certainly think so. As far as yes on 29, some of this is a matter of simple economy. Nearly 30 states have legalized this. The federal government is about to reschedule it. To us, it's a matter of yes, as you said, it's already been passed once. And, you know, a yes on 29 is what we feel is the easiest tax revenue relief that this state could get in an election year where property tax relief is going to be the #1 issue.
Kittrick, your thoughts? Is this the time for South Dakota to legalize recreational marijuana?
I agree with everything Mr. Jurgenson said. Right now we're looking at a potential $100 million investment from South Dakota marijuana purchasers. We look at all the different prospects of legalization in other states. We feel as though that nobody wants to protect South Dakota kids more than we do, and that takes regulation and legalization to do so.
Jim Kinyon, I know your group against this measure. Why is this not time to join
multiple reasons. Number one is when they keep presenting that they're going to generate revenue, I mean, they also aren't realizing or communicating the fact that for every dollar they raise, Colorado spends 4.5 additional dollars to provide the services for health care, mental health, law enforcement, a whole variety of different factors that certainly have negative impact in the local community. So it's far from a profitable prospect for the state. It obviously also isn't a good time just from the point of view that right now we have a huge mental health crisis in the state of South Dakota. We have a huge addiction issue in the state of South Dakota. And if you just take a look at what Rapid City has to offer, when you compare that with cities like Denver and Portland and Washington, D.C., I really don't think that's what we want. I really don't see that that's the community, the standards, the expectations, or tent cities that we want in our parks.
Dr. Strong, what about you? Is this the time for South Dakota to join the recreational marijuana group?
I would say there's never a good time from a kid's standpoint, and as you know, I'm a pediatrician, so I'll only speak to the children's part of this. I applaud the two people, I just met them. I know Kittrick since he was a little boy, but that they, in their presentation, mentioned kids specifically, that they are worried about kids and how it will influence them. I have to politely disagree at their naivety, at least about the children piece of this and how it's going to affect kids in not just this state, but in every state it has. I've done pediatrics here in Rapid City for 34 years. I've taken hundreds of hours of call, thousands of hours of call. I personally, as have my partners at Black Hills Pediatrics, taken care of children who have overdosed on marijuana. It's not legal here yet, and yet they still seem to have access, and they still seem to be getting critically ill. I'd be happy to expound on some of the things we've seen in personal practice. Over the course of my 34 years doing normal nursery rounds, I've seen the numbers of urine drug screens positive for marijuana in pregnant women who have just delivered go up astronomically. I've seen the effects to the kids that we admit to the NICU, because I've taken care of those as well. In my clinic, I've seen over 150,000 kids over 34 years, both in the hospital and in my clinic. And the number of kids who are having problems from not just marijuana, I will grant you, but from other drugs, but marijuana has exponentially gone up, honestly, since Colorado got their legalization. So kids, whether you want them to be exposed or not, you're asking the 21-year-olds and older to be very responsible with their use. And I'm telling you, even without the access, the responsibility is not, we're not seeing it in our ER, in our hospital locally.
Now, Jim, your group is called Protecting South Dakota Kids. In your opinion, what is the impact on kids if marijuana is legalized?
It's tremendous. I mean, I don't know how to explain what I've seen in 31 years of doing outpatient mental health in Rapid City, South Dakota, and in many of our surrounding communities. The detrimental impact that it has on kids, the addiction rate, the high addiction rate for kids who use regularly is not a healthy thing. The number of kids who I've done psych holds on because of psychotic resulting from the use of marijuana and exclusively only marijuana in their system makes very, very clear to me that this is not a non-dangerous drug, and the fact that the American Medical Association is saying this is not a safe drug, and the American Medical Association is also saying they do not recommend legalized recreational marijuana even for adults, should make very clear in terms of health care, this is not healthy for kids, it's not healthy for parents, and it's not healthy for our community.
Kittrick, a minute ago you said that nobody cares more about keeping this out of the hands of kids than your industry. How is that, and what do you guys do, and how do you see that?
Currently, right now, there's over 100,000 habitual users of marijuana in South Dakota per the U.S. Department of Health. Right now, only regulated to 13,000 medical marijuana patients. So the additional adult use marijuana users of roughly around 87,000 are buying marijuana without regulation. What medical marijuana dispensaries and adult use marijuana dispensaries in legal states do is they have verification of ID checkers at the door. They have high intense security and video cameras and surveillance footages. We also cooperate with law enforcement here in the Black Hills, as well as other law enforcement agencies across the country to ensure that this product is safe, tested, and regulated, and that it isn't getting into the hands of kids. It's really, really important to look at all the statistical data from Colorado through the Healthy Kids Colorado survey that shows that statistically, since implementation of regulation since 2013 to today, there has been a decrease in marijuana youth use in Colorado.
Murdoch, how do you see kids fitting into this whole equation?
I think largely this conversation, 90% of the argument sometimes takes place between 10% of the extreme. I think our friends on the opposite side of the aisle's intent are good, but to Kittrick's point, I think the problem of the industry now is that you can't test all of the black market stuff, which we would agree. I think the black market is winning this thing, and legalizing it and making it regulated and then testing it, making sure it gets safe, is gonna be the best way to do it, hands down.
Your thoughts on that, as far as testing and eliminating the black market? What would this do with the black market?
Yeah, well, the black market thrives and explodes in every state where they legalize it, and that happens in state after state after state. And pretending that it isn't going to get in the hands of kids, why is it the highest use rates for states for children? All are states that have even a mature marijuana law in place that allows for recreational use. So again, they know flat out that it's going to increase the availability, increase the use of kids, and we're going to pretend like that's not true. And in every state, they'll say to you, well, if we could clean up the market, in which state, in mature marijuana established markets, have you been able to eliminate the black market? It hasn't happened, it won't happen, and our kids get one chance to grow up. This is not a healthy decision for our state.
And your thoughts on the black market? Will this change things?
I don't think so. And I do applaud their attempt at doing this correctly, but from a purely, and I have a chemistry background, so you're going to have to bear with me, people. I have a 4-year degree from School of Mines in chemistry, so I understand all of this chemically well. But what I'm telling you is when I look at pediatric journals in children, when they're talking about the adults, 2 to 5 milligrams is what your starting dose is with a gummy or whatever, so you get used to your stuff. And some people require much more to get a high or whatever. But when we look at our drugs in kids, no matter what they are, we're doing them in milligram per kilo of body weight. evaluate, when we dose things, when we see the kids. I can give you lots of local, these are all local examples. I don't know about the rest of the world, but I'm worried about this state right here, Western South Dakota, right now. And I'm telling you, we have had kids in our ER, toddlers, 2 to 5, find their parents' gummies. They're illegal, right? They're not even supposed to be getting at this stuff. And yet they're finding them. It's candy to them. All the gummies are candy. They get them, they eat them, they're comatose. That's what, when you see one extreme or the other, medical, the older kids who go a little bit wacky cracky on this stuff, they get psychotic. The younger kids, literally comatose. I'm talking about admitted to the peds floor, on monitors, don't wake up, sternal rub, nothing. They're out. Their heart might be going and they're breathing, that's it. We've had kids up to 3 to 4 days out completely on the peds floor. We've had kids intubated in our ICU because they quit breathing. Their heart worked, but the rest of them didn't. And we leave them ventilated till they wake up. We've transferred a child to Denver who was so critical from just marijuana overdosing. So I don't care how pure you make the product. I don't care where it's coming from. If you increase the availability in our state, you are going to have more and more problems with children. It's fat soluble product. It stays in their system for a prolonged period of time. Your brain, 65% fat. That's the structure. Everybody's brain, 65% fat. When you take any kind of marijuana, I don't care if you're smoking it, chewing it, whatever you're doing, goes here first. That's where it goes. And the long-term effects to a child's brain, you don't get to just give them up. They don't just go away. You're talking about their concentration, their memory, whether they have psychotic or psychiatric problems, from birth to whenever they get exposed through the rest of their adult life. I'm not quite sure what drug is that important that you want to lower your children and your grandchildren's IQs. I don't get it. To me, no offense to the opposing side, but to me, this is just common sense. I don't want it in South Dakota. Colorado made their choice. This will get me in trouble with some people, but you want it, go over there and get it. I don't care. Don't bring it to my town. I don't want it in my community. I'm the one that's got to go take care of your kids when this crap hits the fan.
All right.
We don't like it.
We got to take a break.
Okay.
We'll continue our look at Initiated Measure 29 when we come back with this month's edition of Focus. And good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about Initiated Measure 29, which will be before voters in November, which would legalize recreational marijuana here in South Dakota. We're going to start here with Jim Kinyon. He's the chair of Protecting South Dakota Kids. People talk a lot about personal choice. Alcohol is legal. You can have too much alcohol. Kids can get into alcohol. Is there a difference? How does personal choice play into this, in your view?
Yeah, personal choice is a huge important value for us as citizens in the state of South Dakota, and I appreciate that. I do appreciate that. And oftentimes they frame me as if I'm a prohibitionist, and I always tell them, I'm a Catholic. I'm far from a prohibitionist. There's an old famous saying, where 2 or more Catholics are gathered, there's usually a 5th in their midst. So I'm not against alcohol. I certainly think that there has to be a line, and that line should be drawn not by what makes profit. It should be drawn on what's best for our community. And quite clearly, I can use alcohol very, very, very moderately, and I've never been drunk in my entire life. The intensity and the high rates of concentration of THC make this product practically impossible to use with moderation. It has a devastating impact, and the research we have largely is looking at marijuana at a much lower rate. We have products now that are being sold, which we are outlawing at 99% increase or concentration, and there is no reason why you don't have warning labels on your products to be able to indicate that pregnant women and children should not be consuming this product. Those are just pieces that tells me this is about profit. This is not about health. This is not about fun. This isn't about what's good for our state.
Dr. Strong, Dr. Lori Strong, she's a pediatrician with Black Hills Pediatrics here in Rapid City. Personal choice. Should this be a personal choice?
I am a staunch person of personal choice. Here's my question back to everybody on the panel, and you too, Jack, is what's the choice of the 5-year-old whose parents decided to get gummies and leave them and then get mad at them because they ate them like candy because they weren't supposed to eat them? So where's the choice in the child who is 12 and has ADHD and conduct problems because they've been exposed to marijuana and their brain has changed over the first 12 years of their life? So I'm all for personal choice. I think the children should have some personal choice too in that. And their parents are supposed to be responsible, or the adults around them. It's not happening. Alcohol, water soluble, leaves the system, not good. Drunk drivers kill kids and everybody too. But the difference is that alcohol that the kid gets, we see it with fetal alcohol syndrome, that enough of it early on, prenatally. We've seen the FAS kids and what happens with them long term. We are seeing what happens with marijuana in positive drug screens from birth on. And it's not good for children. Their brains are still developing, and you can't take a fat-soluble compound and expose them to it over and over in any manner and expect a different outcome for them. You're ruining their brain long term.
Brad Jurgenson is with a vote yes on 29 ballot committee. We talk a lot about personal choice.
We do.
How does that fit into the marijuana discussion?
I think it's all about the marijuana discussion. First and foremost, to our friends on the opposite side of the aisle, to be able to trust yourself with alcohol and not us as cannabis users. I'm a medical patient and I know exactly how to regulate this. I agree it should be out of the hands of children, but we should be trusted to. And oh yeah, we already voted once to allow this in 2020. This is not the 1960s reefer madness. It's time for a modern discussion about this debate. And simply put, it is about personal choice, and it's a choice the state has already made.
Kittrick Jeffries, you have a dispensary. What is your thoughts on the personal choice factor here in Initiated Measure 29?
I absolutely agree with my colleague Brad here. We look at personal freedom in South Dakota as something that we tout as one of our liberties in South Dakota. And personally, I think that if you have those personal liberties and freedoms to be able for adults to make the correct decisions, that then plays into those South Dakota values. I think that as per Dr. Strong had stated, with Colorado and the Healthy Kids Colorado survey, that when you look from 2013 to today, that kids are getting educated about the impacts of marijuana and early onset use of marijuana. What they've gone to show within those studies is that the kids have gradually increased that notion that marijuana is harmful, and that means that the education that law enforcement and the Department of Education, teachers, and their parents are having on our youth is explaining to them this is exactly what our proponents are looking for, and changing that connotation that this is an absolutely wildly harmful drug.
Now, Kittrick, you have a dispensary, a number of dispensaries that are already selling medical marijuana.
Correct.
How would the legalization of recreational marijuana impact that landscape out there?
Currently, right now, our number one complaint within the medical marijuana program is that access to a medical marijuana card and bureaucracies through state government prevent access of medical marijuana. Adults over the age of 21 through Initiated Measure 29 would be able to have access without having to go through astronomical bureaucracies that will come with protection labels, warning labels, what we in the industry call like the Surgeon General's warning, although it's not dubbed that through state statute. And the number one thing is that the marijuana that you would buy on the black market isn't in child protective bags or equipment that they would be able to get into.
Jim Kinyon with Protecting South Dakota Kids. We already have medical marijuana here in the state of South Dakota. How's that change the landscape if we had recreational?
Yeah, I mean, pretending like people are having a hard time accessing it is just amazing, because really there are 12,000 cards out, and they anticipated we'd have about 6,000, so we've over doubled that. Really, I mean, the industry's worked really hard to make sure it's available and accessible, because they set up medical clinics in bars and, in one case, in strip clubs in the state of South Dakota to make sure that it's available. Now, I don't know how many people go get their medical cards at strip clubs. I don't think many do. So we have an industry that would like to pretend like they're going to regulate and manage, and they don't regulate and manage. The reality is, just as we've illustrated, kids are getting access, and the reality that the highest concentration of kids using marijuana across the entire nation are all in recreational marijuana states is a clear indication that something that they're trying to do isn't happening. So it's kind of like McDonald's trying to claim that they're against hamburgers. At some point, when you are tripling the use rate, you have to assume a responsibility. And whether we want to claim that that's their industry, the reality is that the black market follows them because there's no way to prosecute. There's no way to prosecute, so it provides cover. So I don't know if we've got good cop, bad cop routine going on here or exactly what's going on, but the impact on our children, our families, and our communities, I don't want to be Denver. I keep saying, tenting has taken on a whole new nature if you go to Denver, and it's called the streets. They're lined there. I don't want to go down to Main Street Square with my kids and my grandkids and have to walk around doobie smoke. That's not good for our state. That's not normalizing what's healthy. We're better safe than that.
Kittrick, real quick, is that a fair description of your industry?
Well, I think when you look at public policy that happened in Denver from 2013 to 2024, you look at, from a tourist perspective, when we go visit Denver, Colorado, where do we go? We go to the Rockies games, we go to 16th Street Mall, we go to the Avalanche games, Broncos. And when you look back at 2015, Governor Polis put a methadone clinic right downtown across from where the homeless shelter is. So when you have access to free methadone, that creates this opportunity and desire for an addictive substance in those that are addicted to more harmful narcotics and heroin and methamphetamine. But we don't look at the overall arching policies that were put into place as tourists. We just see the adverse effects and try and draw correlation that it was marijuana was the reason why this is happening, when that's not the case at all if you go ask the residents of Denver.
All right, we got to take another break. We'll continue our look at Initiated Measure 29 when we continue with this month's edition of Focus. I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about Initiated Measure 29, which will be over the legalization of recreational marijuana here in South Dakota. Got about 2 minutes to go. We're going to give each side 1 minute to kind of give their final push of why you should vote on that. Dr. Lori Strong, pediatrician with Black Hills Pediatrics. Why vote no on Initiated Measure 29?
Thank you. I think when all is said and done and you summarize what's going on with this initiative, it can be about cost and follow the money, as my dad always said. It's about cost, or it's about personal choices, it's about all that. But when it comes down to it, what's it really about? It's about a legacy of what you want South Dakota to be about. And as a pediatrician and a mother and a grandmother, and I have only one legacy that I want to leave, and that's good, healthy kids for our state. And if I'm telling you, I have seen this personally in my practice for 35 years. If you vote for this, you are going to ruin the next generation or two of kids, because their brains are being affected long term.
All right, Kittrick Jeffries, he is the owner of Puffy's Dispensary. Kittrick, why vote yes on November 5th?
The statistics are clear. Colorado youth use has decreased over the first 10 years of implementation. It's a downward trend. Regulation, safety, all of the things that happen in a regulated market are effective in keeping it out of the hands of kids. When we look at the black market, right now, as Dr. Strong had stated previously, all of the marijuana that's getting sold on the black market comes to states like South Dakota that don't have adult use marijuana programs. We can go to Colorado, Montana, newly Minnesota, and even Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and go get adult use marijuana easily and accessibly. It makes sense for taxpayers and the business owners of South Dakota to regulate adult use marijuana at the state level, and that's where we're at.
All right, and that is where we're at, and now it'll be up to you, the voters, on November 5th, Initiated Measure 29, which you will vote yes or no to legalize recreational marijuana here in the state of South Dakota. Again, regardless of which way you vote, just make sure you get out and vote. That is the answer. I want to thank our guests, Brad Jurgenson, Kittrick Jeffries, Jim Kinyon, and Dr. Lori Strong. Again, thank you guys for coming up. Good arguments on both sides of this, and we'll see. It's gone to the voters twice here in South Dakota. Yes once, no once. We'll see where we end up the third time around.
No fisticuffs.
That'll do it for us. Thanks for watching this month's edition of Focus. Hope to see you again the first Sunday night of next month. Good night.